plenty to be discussing with you, as well as a new bill that you're proposing at the moment of parental leave. But first of all, Senator Cassidy, what spectacular alternative could the Republicans actually rally around right now?
Well, I don't think there's any bill that would pass in 2020 that would be a replacement of Obamacare. But one thing we can do is first look at principles. Republicans are about giving power to the patient. Democrats, if you will, are about having power over the patient. And by doing so, by working on these types of bills, this Congress, for example, price transparency, surprise medical billing, lowering drug costs. By the way, working on a bipartisan basis, we set the foundation for things which we may do in the future.
Is this, as far as the proposals that are being talked about in Congress, are these proposals that are going to build on the Affordable Care Act and some of the provisions that are there already, or is this basically, let's walk that back and let's start from scratch?
Well, the Affordable Care Act is 2,000 pages, and so you can't kind of, what in those 2,000 pages do you keep and what do you throw away? Kind of a broad question. On the other hand, we do know that the Affordable Care Act, since it passed, we've seen record kind of capital gains or stock price increases for pharma, hospitals, and insurance companies. I'm not knocking them, I'm just pointing that out. And it's also been associated with record increases in premiums and taxpayer outlays. The way you address that is by attempting to lower the cost of health care and what the patient is being billed. And those are the bills we're working on this Congress, surprise medical billing, as I mentioned, as well as price transparency, making health savings accounts more usable and more used, those sorts of things. I think that reverses the trend. I think that sets the stage for doing other things in the future.
Senator, do Republicans have a plan if Obamacare is deemed to be unconstitutional and gets ripped up and people just lose it immediately?
Well, again, Obamacare is 2,000 pages, but if, for example, you're speaking about pre-existing conditions, yes. There is something that Tom Tillis is putting together. I'm having input in others that will take care of those with pre-existing conditions. Staying on your parents' insurance till age 26. We will restore that. That was actually originally a Republican idea, one of the few that Obamacare used. So we would also kind of restore that into law, as well as other things. Those things that are part of the fabric of our healthcare system now, we would preserve.
Senator, I want to go further on the pre-existing conditions, because the criticism of Republican healthcare plans has not been that patients with pre-existing conditions would lose access per se, but that insurers would have large discretion for how to price those insurers, those patients, thus making it kind of irrelevant whether legally they can stay on them. How do you assure people that what people think of as those protections would remain?
I smile because the criticisms last time I would say were unwarranted. So if people wish to assert things that are not true, can't do anything about that. But as I mentioned, Tom Tillis is drafting a bill, which will be a little bit more straightforward. I'm sure it'll still be criticized. This is a political town, so people will say things even if they're not true. But that will give those reassurances to folks that those with pre-existing conditions will still have the same protections.
Now, it's notable at a time such as this on Capitol Hill that you're working in a bipartisan nature, and Senator Cassidy, you're putting forward particularly a family leave proposal. Can you talk us through it and how you think that this is something that can better not only the world for businesses, but the people who work at the businesses as well?
Yeah, our goal is that new parents would have the opportunity to stay at home with their child for a period of time. Both parents, but obviously women, it's usually the woman that focuses on this. And so the way we would do this is first by recognizing you have to be fiscally sound. And that right now, if you earn over about $70,000 a year, you have paid parental leave, even if it is by another name. So the real need is for those less than $70,000 a year. Second, you can recognize that it doesn't have to be 6 months. 6 to 8 weeks probably is maybe not as much as some would like, but it's something that we could afford. You begin to look at that and you begin making this feasible financially. I personally am opposed to financing by increasing the payroll tax. I think that that is a regressive tax that is actually hurting the people whom we are attempting to help. So we do have to find a way to finance, though, and that'll be one of the issues. I'm right now working with Kirsten Sinema, the Democrat from Arizona. We do have a bipartisan effort. Ours is the only bipartisan effort.
Senator Cassidy, you yourself were a doctor. Do you think 6 to 8 weeks is really what is all that is necessary? Is that just a starting block? Is that what you assume will be built upon? Because I come from Europe where 6 to 8 weeks would be laughed about.
So it is dialable, but right now, if you're less than $70,000 a year in income, you get zero. Zero. And to a certain extent, this can be attached to FMLA, but we're trying to resolve a tension here. We want to be able to have something which is fiscally sustainable, allow the woman, say, for example, the mom, to be able to stay at home with her child, bond with her child, good for her health, good for the patient, good for the babies, but at the same time be able to return to work and retain the seniority she has accumulated and still bring the training that she has accumulated to the benefit of the business. Longer than 8 weeks, if we can afford it, that's a dial, but we have to recognize that may weaken attachment to the workforce. We just have to think about that. We're at the beginning stages of this, not the beginning, but the intermediate stages, so we have time to fully consider.
All right, Senator, I want to turn real quickly to trade, because obviously Louisiana, the state you represent, is a big beneficiary of a lot of international trade. It's also one of the states most at risk from some of the tariff issues that we're dealing with right now. What are you hearing from your constituents, particularly businesses, with regards to the trade talks and the potential resolution of them?
They want the USMCA to be resolved, and you're right, my state has a great deal of its GDP related to international trade. There is concern about the tariffs. We have a lot of folks using steel from other countries, steel that is proprietary to Japan and Germany, used to drill oil and gas wells that the U.S. does not make, so they're very concerned about that. As regards China, though, I think there is a sense that China has not played fairly, that at some point we have to stand up to China, and most folks, even if they're having some discomfiture, applaud the president for his efforts.